The Columbia Records CEO slammed the table and said, "Who's going to buy music this melancholic?" What Jeff said in that moment didn't just change the CEO's mind, it changed the entire music industry and proved that sometimes the most uncomfortable truths create the most beautiful art. New York City, Columbia Records headquarters, October 12, 1993, Tuesday afternoon, 47th floor, corner office, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. The kind of office where million-dollar decisions are made daily, where careers are launched or destroyed with a single conversation, where art meets commerce, and usually commerce wins. Jeff Buckley sits across from Don Yinner, president of Columbia Records. Between them, a mahogany table worth more than most people's cars. On the table, a CD player, some papers, and the demo recordings that would eventually become Grace, though nobody in that room knows it yet. Jeff looks uncomfortable. He's wearing his usual lacquer simple black t-shirt, jeans, boots, his curly hair falls over his eyes. He keeps pushing it back, a nervous habit. This isn't his world. Boardrooms, corporate decisions, market analysis. This is everything he became a musician to escape from. Don Yinner is the opposite. Expensive suit, perfectly groomed. Every gesture calculated. He's been in the music business for 25 years. He's launched careers, created superstars, turned unknown artists into household names. He knows what sells. He knows what doesn't. And right now, he's not impressed with what he's hearing. But what happens in the next 5 minutes will change everything. Jeff's demo has been playing for 20 minutes. Songs that would later become Mourn, Last Goodbye, Eternal Life. Raw, emotional, complex. Jeff's voice soars and whispers, sometimes within the same line. The arrangements are intricate, layered, demanding. This isn't radio-friendly pop music. This isn't formulaic rock. This is something else entirely. Don stops the CD player mid-song. The silence is sudden, jarring. Jeff looks up. Anxiety flickering across his face. "Jeff," Don says, his voice measured, professional. "This is beautiful music. Really it is. You're incredibly talented. Your voice is unique." Jeff waits for the but. It's coming. He can feel it. "But I have to be honest with you. This music," Don gestures at the CD player like he's pointing at something distasteful. "This music won't sell." The words hang in the air like smoke. Jeff's face doesn't change, but something shifts behind his eyes. Don continues, gaining momentum. "It's too sad, too introspective, too complicated. Radio won't play this. MTV won't touch it. People don't want to be depressed when they listen to music. They want to feel good. They want to escape, not confront their problems." Jeff still says nothing, just listens. "Look," Don leans forward, his tone becoming fatherly, condescending. "I've been doing this for 25 years. I know what works. Nirvana works because it has energy, anger, rebellion. Pearl Jam works because it has anthems, sing-along choruses. Stone Temple Pilots, Soundgarden. They give people something to grab onto." Don stands up, starts pacing behind his desk. "Your music, it's like a therapy session. Who wants to pay $15 for a therapy session? People buy music to feel better about their lives, not to examine their pain more closely." Here's where it gets interesting. Jeff finally speaks. His voice is quiet, calm. "You're right about one thing, Don. This music is like therapy." Don stops pacing, looks surprised. He expected argument, defensiveness. Instead, Jeff sounds thoughtful. "But you're wrong about why people need that." Jeff stands up, walks to the window, looks out at Manhattan, millions of people rushing around, all carrying their own secret pain, their own unspoken fears. "You think people want to escape their problems? I think people want to know they're not alone with their problems." Dawn starts to interrupt, but Jeff continues. "Every night I perform at Cine, I see it. People crying during Mourn, not because I'm making them sad, but because I'm giving them permission to feel what they're already feeling. I'm not creating their sadness, Don. I'm acknowledging it." Jeff turns back to face Don. "You know what's really sad? The fact that we live in a world where feeling things deeply is considered unmarketable. But wait, this is where everything changes." Jeff walks back to the table, but doesn't sit down. He leans forward, hands on the mahogany surface, looking directly at Dawn. Let me ask you something, Dawn. When was the last time music changed your life? Dawn looks confused. Changed my life? Yeah. When did you last hear a song that made you understand something about yourself you didn't know before? When did you last hear music that made you feel less alone in the universe? Dawn is quiet. Jeff can see him thinking, remembering. I bet it wasn't a radio hit, Jeff continues. I bet it was something that caught you off guard, something that spoke to a part of you that you usually keep hidden. Jeff reaches for the CD, puts it back in the player. This music isn't for everyone, Dawn. You're right about that. But it's for the people who need it most. The people who feel too much in a world that tells them to feel less. The people who think they're broken because they can't pretend everything's okay. He presses play. Morn fills the office again. Jeff's voice, vulnerable and powerful at the same time. You want to know why this music will sell? Because there are millions of people walking around feeling like they're the only ones who hurt this deeply. And when they hear this, they'll realize they're not crazy. They're not alone. They're not broken. Dawn sits back down, really listening now, not as a record executive, as a human being. This isn't music for the masses, Dawn. This is music for the individuals who make up those masses, the ones who usually get ignored because their pain doesn't fit into a market demographic. Jeff pauses the CD player. You know what's going to happen? Some 17-year-old kid is going to buy this album because something about the cover catches his eye. He's going to listen to it in his bedroom at 2 a.m., feeling like he wants to die because he's different, because he feels things other people don't seem to feel. Jeff's voice gets stronger, more passionate, and when he hears Last Goodbye, when he hears me singing about longing and loss and the way love can destroy and heal you at the same time, he's going to cry. Not because I made him sad, but because I made him feel understood. Dawn is leaning forward now, absorbed. That kid is going to tell his friend. His friend is going to tell her sister. Her sister is going to play it for her boyfriend. And slowly, one broken heart at a time, this music is going to find its people. You haven't seen the most shocking part yet. Jeff sits back down. You asked who's going to buy music this melancholic? I'll tell you who. The people who are tired of pretending. The people who are sick of songs that lie to them about what life feels like. The people who want their music to be as real as their pain. The office is completely quiet, except for the hum of air conditioning and distant traffic. Dawn, you can manufacture hits. You can create catchy hooks in marketing campaigns and radio strategies. But you can't manufacture meaning. You can't create authentic connection. And that's what this music has. Jeff leans back in his chair. This music won't sell because it's commercial. It will sell because it's necessary. Dawn hasn't said a word for 5 minutes. He's staring at Jeff like he's seeing him for the first time. Then something extraordinary happens. Dune's professional mask slips. For just a moment, Jeff sees something real underneath. Vulnerability, recognition, maybe even pain. Jeff, Dawn says quietly. Can you play that last song again? Jeff presses play. Dream Brother fills the office. The song Jeff wrote about addiction, about loss, about watching someone you love destroy themselves, the most personal song on the demo. As the song plays, Don closes his eyes. Jeff watches him, sees something changing in his expression. When the song ends, Don is quiet for a long moment. I had a brother, Don says finally. Heroin. Lost him 10 years ago. Jeff nods, doesn't say anything. Lets the silence hold space. I never talk about it. Not even to my wife. But listening to that song, Don looks up at Jeff. It's like you knew him. I didn't know him, Jeff says gently. But I know that kind of loss. I know what it feels like to love someone you can't save. Don stands up, walks to the window, his back to Jeff. In this business, you learn to think about everything in terms of units sold, market share, demographic appeal. You forget that music used to be about connection. He turns around. You just reminded me why I got into this business in the first place. Now the real surprise. Don walks back to his desk, picks up the phone. Sarah, get me Tom Corson from marketing and Steve Rubin from AANDR. I want them in here in 10 minutes. He hangs up, looks at Jeff. We're signing you today, and we're not going to ask you to change a thing. Jeff looks stunned. Don. No, listen to me. You're right. We've been so focused on giving people what we think they want, we've forgotten about giving them what they need. This music, he gestures at the CD player. This music is going to matter. Moon sits back down. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be challenging. Radio might not embrace it immediately. Men TV might not understand it at first, but we're going to find the right way to present it. We're going to trust that there are enough people out there who need this music to sustain it. What changed your mind? Jeff asks. Don thinks for a moment. You reminded me that the best music has always been uncomfortable. Dylan was uncomfortable. Joni Mitchell was uncomfortable. Leonard Cohen was uncomfortable. They made music that forced people to feel things they weren't sure they wanted to feel. And that music lasted because it was necessary. Tom Corson and Steve Rubin arrive. Don introduces Jeff, explains the project. I want you to listen to this music not as industry executives, but as human beings, Don tells them. Don't think about market positioning or target demographics, just listen. They play the demo start to finish. Tom and Steve sit quietly, absorbing, when it's over. Tom speaks first. This is intense, beautiful, but intense. How do we market something this emotionally complex? Don answers before Jeff can. We don't market it, we present it. We trust that the right people will find it and connect with it. And those people will tell other people. Word of mouth, authentic recommendation. Steve nods slowly. It's risky, but I think it could work. There's definitely an audience for this kind of honesty. Over the next hour, they work out details. Jeff will have complete creative control. No pressure to write radio hits. No demands to lighten the mood. The album will be promoted as art, not just entertainment. As the meeting winds down, Don walks Jeff to the elevator. Jeff, I need to apologize. When you first came in here, I was thinking like a businessman, not like a music lover. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? That the music that changes people's lives is usually the music that makes them uncomfortable first. The music that forces them to confront something they've been avoiding. The elevator arrives. As Jeff steps in, Don says, "One more thing. That 17-year-old kid you talked about? The one who's going to listen to this at 2 a.m. feeling like he wants to die?" Jeff nods. I was that kid once, and if music like this had existed when I was 17, Don's voice trails off. Well, maybe I would have felt less alone. The elevator doors close. 6 months later, Grace is released. It receives mixed commercial response initially, but overwhelming critical acclaim. Rolling Stone calls it a masterpiece of vulnerability. The New York Times writes, Jeff Buckley has created music for the emotionally homeless, but the real success is in the letters, hundreds of letters from fans. Kids talking about how Last Goodbye helped them through breakups. Adults writing about how Hallelujah gave them permission to grieve. College students saying Eternal Life made them feel less alone with their existential anxiety. Dawn frames one letter. It's from a 17-year-old kid in Ohio who writes, I was going to kill myself last Tuesday, but then I heard Dream Brother and realized someone else understood what I was feeling. Thank you for signing Jeff Buckley. You literally saved my life. 5 years later, after Jeff's death, Grace becomes recognized as one of the greatest albums ever made. It influences thousands of artists. It sells millions of copies worldwide. Not because it was commercial, but because it was necessary. The album that Donnie Yenner initially thought was too sad to sell becomes Columbia Records' most critically acclaimed release of the 1990s, but the impact goes beyond sales figures. Grace changes how the music industry thinks about emotional authenticity. It proves that there's a massive audience for music that doesn't insult listeners' intelligence or emotional complexity. Other labels start signing artists who write about depression, anxiety, existential questioning. The late 90s see an explosion of emotionally honest music. Artists like Radiohead, Elliott Smith, and Fiona Apple find mainstream success with deeply personal, sometimes painful music. Don Yenner, in interviews years later, always mentions Jeff Buckley when asked about his most important signings. Jeff taught me that uncomfortable music is often the most necessary music, he says. He reminded me that our job isn't to give people what they think they want. it's to give them what they didn't know they needed. The meeting that started with "this music won't sell" ended up proving that the music people need most is often the music they're most afraid to listen to. In 2019, Rolling Stone publishes an oral history of influential record label meetings. The Jeff Buckley-Don Inner conversation is included as one of the meetings that changed the trajectory of popular music. Tom Corson, now CEO of Warner Records, says, "That meeting taught me to trust my emotional response to music over my analytical response. Some of the best signings I've made since then have been artists who made me feel uncomfortable in the best possible way." Steve Rubin, now an independent A&R consultant, adds, "Jeff didn't just convince us to sign him, he reminded us why music matters in the first place. He brought the humanity back into the business equation." Don Ayer, now retired, keeps a copy of Grace on his desk. When young executives ask him for advice, he tells them the Jeff Buckley story. "Don't ask if it will sell," he tells them. "Ask if it's necessary. Ask if it fills a void in people's lives that they didn't even know existed. The music that sells forever is the music that people need, not just the music they want." Jeff Buckley was told his music was too sad to sell. 5 minutes of honest conversation proved that sadness, when transformed into art, is exactly what the world was waiting for. The lesson: sometimes the music industry's biggest successes come from ignoring the music industry's conventional wisdom. The question: what unmarketable truth are you afraid to share with the world? Because somewhere, someone is waiting to hear exactly what you think they don't want to hear. And when they hear it, they'll realize they've been waiting for it their entire lives. That's what Jeff Buckley understood. That's what Donnie Yenner learned. That's what Grace proved. Art isn't about giving people what they want. Art is about giving people what they need, even when they don't know they need it. Especially when they don't know they need it. But the story doesn't end with that meeting. Because what happened in the months following proved that Jeff's philosophy about necessary music was about to be tested in ways no one could have predicted. 3 weeks after signing with Columbia, Jeff was called back for another meeting. This time, it wasn't just Don Yenner. The entire Columbia executive team was there: marketing directors, radio promotion specialists, MTV liaisons, the works. "Jeff," Don began, "we love the music, but the marketing team has some concerns about how to position it." Janet Morrison, head of marketing, pulled out a thick folder. "We've done some focus group testing with your demos. The results are mixed." She opened the folder, started reading statistics. Ages 18 to 25. Primarily male rock audience, they find it too emotional. Ages 25-35, mixed gender, they appreciate the artistry, but find it challenging for casual listening. Ages 35-50, it's strong, positive response, but that's not our primary market. Jeff listened patiently. This was the part he'd been dreading. "So what are you suggesting?" Jeff asked. "Well," Janet continued, "we think with a few adjustments we could broaden the appeal significantly, maybe add some more upbeat tracks, something with a stronger rhythm section, and perhaps we could workshop some of the lyrics to make them more accessible." The room fell silent. Everyone waited for Jeff's response. Jeff looked around the table. 12 executives in expensive suits, all looking at him expectantly, all wanting him to compromise his vision for market share. "Can I tell you a story?" Jeff said finally. Don nodded, intrigued. "Last month, I was playing at Cine. There was this woman sitting in the corner, maybe 45, 50 years old, well-dressed, looked like she had her life together. During last goodbye, she started crying, not just tears, sobbing, shaking." Jeff paused, making sure everyone was listening. "After the show, she came up to me, told me she'd just lost her husband to cancer, said she'd been to grief counseling, tried antidepressants, read every self-help book. Nothing helped. But hearing that song, she said it was the first time in 6 months she felt like someone understood her pain." Jeff looked directly at Janet. "Now if I had made Last Goodbye more accessible, more upbeat, would it have reached that woman? Would it have given her what she needed in that moment?" Janet shifted uncomfortably. "Jeff, we're not saying you should eliminate the emotional content. We're just suggesting ways to expand the potential audience." "But that's exactly what you are saying," Jeff replied. "You're asking me to dilute the medicine so more people will take it." But what if the strength of the medicine is exactly why it works? He stood up, walked to the window. You know what's funny? Everyone keeps talking about broadening the appeal. But what if instead of making music for everyone, we made music for someone? What if we trusted that there are enough someones out there to make it worthwhile? Mike Rodriguez, head of radio promotion, spoke up. Jeff, I get the artistic integrity thing. I really do, but radio won't play 6-minute songs about existential despair. They just won't. Then maybe radio isn't the right place for this music, Jeff said simply. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. In 1993, radio was everything. MTV was everything. Without mainstream media support, how could an album succeed? Don raised his hand for silence. Jeff, what exactly are you proposing? Jeff turned back to the table. I'm proposing we trust the music to find its audience in his